Would it surprise you to know that men fear looking at themselves in the mirror? It's not just the shame of maybe something they've done in the past, but it's actually the shame of looking at their own bodies. And that's something that is so faux pas to say in the world today. I mean, it creates just this sense of a lack of masculinity in that man, maybe just this thought of fear, again, so much shame and so many other things associated with that. And there's so much built up into that. And so that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation today. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube, you're already looking at him. If not, I'm introducing a good buddy of mine, Seth Trout. He's a pastor at Ironwood Church out in Phoenix, Arizona. And Seth and I have known each other now for 12 years, which that's so crazy to think about. Maybe we'll get into a little bit of that later. But we just intersected in a pastoral training and theological studies program we went through way back when I definitely knew nothing. I think he knew a little bit more than nothing than I did at that time. But here we are today. So what's up, dude? It's good to be here.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, thanks for having me out. I'm excited to have this conversation. And it is wild. It's been 12 years when I think I was sleeping on the floor in your house when I drive out to Orange County and go to classes with you. And me and Russell would sleep on the floor of your house, and then you'd make us breakfast. We'd go to class. It was a good time.
I remember the first time that I asked my wife, so for those that don't know, so we were going through this program out of now the defunct Mars Hill Church up in Seattle. And we started on site up in Seattle. So that's where Seth and I met with a couple of the other guys. And then we had to do cohorts that were monthly. And so one of those cohorts was in Orange County. Seth and this other guy, Russell, they were out in Phoenix in that area. And so I said to my wife, hey, can these guys come hang out at the house? Like, we're all broke. Everyone just needs kind of a place to crash. And she's like, I guess. I don't know them, but we'll see. And I just remember how pumped my kids were. And my littlest one, gosh, she was probably 3 or 4 at the time. And so she was always pumped when Seth and Ruffle came. That's what she always used to say. Seth and Ruffle are coming. Seth and Ruffle are coming. Anyway, so you've been on a pretty intense journey yourself. You have taken that as a launching point into seminary. You went on from there. So maybe, Seth, just a little bit of background, because I normally actually don't do this, but I think because of the context of what we're going to talk about today, it'll help people to understand why you speak the way you do about gender, masculinity, and manhood.
Yeah, so after that one-year program we did, I finished and got an MDiv at Phoenix Seminary, and then went on to get a doctorate through Covenant. It's called Digitization and Neo-Docetism, and it's all about how the digital world affects the way we relate to our bodies. Especially, I was looking at how we understand gender. Is gender a matter of the mind or of the body? And how, for most of world history, people assumed that gender was a matter of the body, but only recently people started thinking of gender as a matter of the mind, and kind of trying to explain why has that conception gotten so popular and so normal that you could be a male but feel like a woman. What does it even mean to feel like a woman? Like, what is even like that internal sense of gender is a new concept, and so new concepts aren't inherently bad, but this one tends to be or is. And so trying to think through, like, especially young people who feel this like choice anxiety, like, what if I wake up one day and feel like the opposite gender? What would they even be talking about when they said that? And what can churches and moms and dads do to push back against that radical gap that the mind tells you the truth, but your body lies to you, which, the term that's popular now is gaslighting. Don't listen to your body is a way of manipulating and controlling people. But your body tells you the truth about who you are. That's the way it's summarized. My doctoral dissertation is your body tells you the truth about who you are. Your mind lies to you a lot, but your body always tells you the truth. And so it always tells you the truth about something going on inside of you, and something genetically that's a reality. And so jumping off of that, past the transgender conversation, you get into just the gender conversation.
Okay, before we go there, just to back up a second. So you chose to step into that realm. What year was that?
I started the dissertation in 2020. So right at the COVID lockdowns, when I was thinking all these people being separated from one another, just interacting via screens, this has got to affect the development of teenagers, the development of children. Adults who've had lots of reps in the flesh Now children are going to get way less reps in the flesh. What are the possible implications of this? How is it going to line up with the gender craziness that's already been happening? And so I went back to Plato and did like a historical survey, and then interviewed therapists looking at the developmental self-concept as it relates to connecting to people on screens versus in person in the flesh.
So what's wild is I don't think people understand just how rapidly this whole idea has accelerated, and we're going to get into obviously more than just gender dysphoria here. But I mean, even when you went into that in 2020, that was far different of a conversation than it is 4 years later, right? And so, I mean, you were really at kind of an earlier stage of just how chaotic that conversation and idea has gotten.
Yeah, things were getting weird, and they started to get even more weird. And I do think that the culture is cooling off a bit on the wildness of it all. Like, I have a lot of friends and a couple close family members who would have described themselves as leftists, Bernie Sanders types for a long time, and they've all flipped and have become like non-religious right types, largely because of reacting to the trans issues on behalf of their kids. So like the parental protection instinct. So not like any of the other views changed. They didn't get converted and become followers of Jesus, but they just were non-religious left to now they're non-religious right, largely because of the gender stuff. And I think that the Joe Rogans of the world are a part of that shift, that reorganization. And now, like, even when you consider like politics, that's a pretty big dividing thing. But it does feel like there was an inertia in one direction, and that inertia feels like it's slowed, leveled off, and possibly going back in another direction as far as like the LGBT, but the T and the LGBT stuff goes.
Yeah. Okay, so you do your doctoral thesis, you get your doctorate in that area, and then what? Like, what were you hoping to do with that?
I was hoping to equip my church to think and disciple more soberly about these things. And then there's this pivot I made. So I've been doing CrossFit, competitive CrossFit, for about 10 years, and I started to just get sick of it. The lower back wasn't having it anymore, and the volume of training demanded to be competitive. I had little kids. So right now I have a kid who's turning 5 this month, and a kid who's turning 3 in January. So Olivia and Jay, and they just don't have the time to do the volume of competitive training. And so I started going to like one of the big box gyms here. And one of the things that was wild to me was mirror culture, right? And one of the things that's about CrossFit is there's no mirrors. There's no mirrors in a CrossFit gym. They call it a box. It's like a no frills thing. The only mirrors in the bathroom, and it's like, whereas I go to like one of the gyms here, and there's mirrors on every wall. People look at themselves in the mirrors, eye contact with yourself in the mirror, people flexing in the mirror. And the vanity of it was pretty shocking, having done CrossFit for 10 years. Now, CrossFit's not exactly like the most modest of spaces either.
Right.
But it seemed a little bit more oriented towards movement performance, not like kind of like bodybuilding culture and like seeing people look at themselves. I had the flexing in the mirror thing. To me, I was like, this is like, how is nobody waving this narcissism flag around? Because this is just crazy. And there's that scene in American Psycho where the guy's having sex with the woman, but he's looking at himself in the mirror while he's doing it, and he's like really impressed with himself. And I was like, I was feeling like this whole place is American Psycho, of people just looking at themselves in the mirror, being impressed with themselves. I just feel like this is wild and unhealthy. And so there's a couple months there of like just culture shock on mirror culture. And then I just started talking to a lot of guys at Mountainside, and I was shocked, blown away at how many were very, one, comfortable, and two, using steroids. Like and it wasn't like, hey, are you using steroids? Like, where did you? And it was like, oh yeah, I'm on Mast, I'm on Tren, I'm on TRT, and it was like the most normal thing. Like someone would talk about taking whey protein, the guys were talking about taking steroids, and it was shameless. There wasn't like a sense of rebellion. There wasn't even like so that I can be competitive in a sport and so it was just they want to look and be different. And so the rise in steroids, the commonality of it, like there's multiple times I've been in the sauna, there's 8 guys in there, 7 of them, so all of them except for me, are openly talking about how often and when they take steroids. And the saddest part about it is only one of them looks like he takes steroids.
Yeah.
The rest of the rest of the guys just look like normal guys, and they look like, they look healthy or fit, but none of them are like. And so I'm going, you are severely damaging your future health for not that great of benefit, but like you really want to look and feel different, and there's this obsession over image, and these guys are, husbands or their fathers, they have kids that are teenagers, these aren't guys who are 17 who wish they had the body of a 30-year-old. These are guys who are 35 who wish they just had a different 35-year-old's body. Yeah. And so then maybe a month or two after that, GQ magazine had a whole article on the rise of steroids. And so then the connection to me with my thesis on my dissertation, that you have one phenomenon where people who are gender dysphoric are shooting themselves with testosterone because they're women who feel like they're men, and you have men shooting themselves with testosterone because they're men who don't feel like men. And so the connection to technology and the way that we assume bodies ought to be because of technology is all a part of this. Like you would not have had this type of thinking or feeling about male body image, especially relates to muscle, apart from technological intervention. Like we talk about Photoshop and how it made body image so hard for women. 20, 25 years ago. Instagram, bad for women. But I'd say Photoshop is harming men, but I think steroid culture, testosterone culture is harming men more. And so now we see that body dysmorphia, not necessarily gender dysmorphia, but not liking your body, or they call it muscle dysmorphia, is as common in teen boys as it is in teen girls. And so body image, which used to be seen as a female thing, because you go to the grocery store and you're checking out and there's all these things catered to women, that's lose 40 pounds in 4 weeks, that was all about skinniness or becoming smaller. Now you see the same stuff for men, but on the opposite side, getting bigger. And so what men and women have in common is they don't like their bodies. Women tend to want theirs smaller, men tend to want theirs bigger. And so it all, to me, is related to technology. I wrote an article recently and submitted it, and the whole idea was, I called it Hogwarts anthropology, meaning we all go to Hogwarts now. We want to say a spell, we want to drink a potion, we want to say the magic words, and we view our bodies as fundamentally customizable. All that goes into that is wild. So even if you think about, if you Google right now Muhammad Ali, and you see a picture of Muhammad Ali, what people call one of the greatest athletes of all time, you see him with his shirt off, and he looks like if that guy walked onto the CrossFit Games field, you'd think, who is that doofus out there who's out of shape and doesn't know what he's doing? And so that was, just a generation ago, the epitome or the peak of male physique was actually achievable through general good exercise and generally good diet. Whereas now you go to Deadpool versus Wolverine and you see Hugh Jackman take his shirt off and he's shredded to pieces, 60-ish or 70 years old, tons of muscle mass, less than 8% body fat, shredded to high heaven. And that is fundamentally not possible without chemical interventions or hormonal interventions or pharmacology. And so just like now people, instead of praying, they want to eat mushrooms, they want to take a chemical or a technological intervention and impose it, they want a microwave version of prayer. So also you have this kind of steroid version of body image. And so our entire assumption on what constitutes a healthy looking male is skewed by steroid culture, Instagram culture. So to the point, I bet some people who look like Muhammad Ali think that they aren't strong enough, big enough, fast enough, fit enough, when in reality, 60 years ago, they would look like the fittest person on earth. And that creates a lot of pressure for men.
Okay, so I think there's so many things that you said there. So first of all, I've talked about this maybe very briefly. So I've actually been on TRT for the better part of two and a half years because of another medical issue that I had that solved for. And this is where this like really became, I really became aware of this conversation. There was so much shame in talking about it that that there was nowhere to go. It was like, oh my gosh, like I have this issue. I'm having these issues. Who do I talk to? If I talk about this part of this issue, what's going to happen? If I talk to these people, oh my gosh, they're gonna judge me differently. Then I started on TRT, and it was like top secret. Like nobody, one person knew. Well, my wife, and then one person. And I'm like, dude, sworn to secrecy. You can never tell anybody. Like I didn't want, because it wasn't for like, performance, in the gym. And so I didn't want people to think that's what I was doing it for, but it just opened up all of these other discussions that I started having. I started talking to guys about, again, just their own issues with physique and looking in the mirror. I was talking to guys about sexual issues with ED and things that were happening. So all of these things are piling in on these guys, all the while, like we would have seen 20 years ago with women in magazine covers, and even farther. Now, your Hugh Jackman example or whomever else, it's like, not only are men having so many mental and emotional struggles with dealing with comparing themselves to these things, and then maybe true physical issues, but there's no space to talk about them. And so they just go to what is being publicized typically, which is, I'm just going to go on a steroid cycle, or I'm just going to go find somebody to prescribe me TRT, and I'm just going to figure it out for myself. And so I think that's where a lot of the struggle is too, is like, where do you even go when you start having these feelings of doubt, shame, struggle, and that you can trust is healthy, because there's just not space to be created.
Yeah. And I think that's so I appreciate you talking about the TRT. I have at least a dozen friends on TRT, and probably I'd say 2/3 of them I'd say are on for medicinal reasons, and the other third I'd say would be on for recreational reasons, which I know we make that distinction with marijuana, but I think you can make that same distinction with TRT. Like one of my buddies, he was like, his test was so low, he was tired all the time. He had inflammation developing in his heart valves. His numbers were like 90 to 112. That's like, and so now he's got him back up in the 600s, which is a sustainable place, and he's doing better. But there's like a whole layer of things there. Some of my other friends, their numbers are down to 700, and they want them right at 1300 all the time. So just for like, if you like, the typical male range is like 275 to 975. They consider like the healthy range, and not that every person needs a different level, but anyway, the point being is some guys that I know will go on this trying to because they just want to feel big, and they don't understand the risk involved. And here's the thing: is getting bigger will not actually solve your muscle dysmorphia. Like I remember watching an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he says, even after I won Mr. Olympia, I look at myself in the mirror and say, like, who is that skinny loser? I mean, he said it some other way, but he's like, I never thought I was big enough. I never felt good about my body. I never felt like I was done. I always felt like I'm not good enough. How come I keep winning these things? Because I'm not who I want to be. And so the belief that you're going to solve your body image issues by changing your body is a bit of a trap that you'll get stuck in forever. Not only because time always wins and you always age, but also because the body image issues are fundamentally not body issues. That it's one thing if you look in the mirror and you go, I am committing suicide by lifestyle. I need to change something. Which I do think the sixth commandment requires us to pursue health and longevity and wellness, that we're made in God's image and we're valuable and we're worth investing in for that reason alone. That my body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, right? And so what I contain is valuable. Like I think a couple weeks ago, I took my in-laws to the airport, and they had their 3 bags, and one bag had her clothes, one bag had his clothes, and one bag had all this fine china in it. And I don't know why they're moving it for some reason, but it's like they're all the same bags, but the bags with clothes in it, I just tossed on the belt. Right. But the bag with fine china on it, I like carried it gently and set it down. And so what is contained in the thing determines how you treat the thing. And so if we're temples of the Holy Spirit, then what's contained in us is valuable, and we have to treat it like a temple. Like you wouldn't walk past a temple of God, spit on it, and say that should be smaller or that should be bigger.
Right.
You know, that's not how it works. But yet we do that to ourselves. We do it to other people. We objectify others. We objectify ourselves. The other piece of it too, I think, is pornography culture. Is the hypersexualization of everything. Is wives feel like they need to look like porn stars to their husbands, and husbands feel like they need to look like porn stars to their wives. Otherwise, they feel like my spouse is not going to want to have sex with me. And even in Christian marriages where pornography is not an issue, there is a pornified society that bleeds into this hyper-visual, hyper-sexualized perspective on image. And like pretending like that's not going on it is foolish. And so,
well, maybe to that point, so I think it's something you talked about this with CrossFit. I think this is something that is really dangerous, and I actually see this as prevalent. And it's not a CrossFit problem; it's the people inside the CrossFit problem. So, I sweat a lot when I work out, and so I mean, my shirt's off, 75% of the year in that gym because I'm pouring and I'm wearing a soaking tarp, and yet I'm always embarrassed with my shirt off. And people are like, oh, you take it off all the time, you must love it. I'm like, no, it's actually the exact opposite, because inside that gym, there are guys that are in incredible shape, shredded, way more jacked than I am. And so inside there, I feel like I am in the bottom 2% of fitness, whereas I take myself outside of that and I'm in the top 1% probably, in fitness at 46 years old. And so I think that becomes such a problem is when we're subjected to an environment that we're comparing ourselves against, whether it's porn or it's a magazine or it's a community that we're a part of, we can very quickly start tearing ourselves down because we're comparing ourselves to somebody else that we weren't created to be in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the whole, like the phrase comparison's the thief of joy. That's true. I also think there's a type of comparison that can be like appreciative or grateful, right? So if you and I are in the CrossFit gym together and you smoke me on the mile run, I can either, sad puppy that, hang my head and go like, oh, Ryan's legs better than my legs. Or you'd be like, dude, good for Ryan. He can run. He's got, gazelle-like intensity on the treadmill.
I don't, but thank you.
And so sometimes comparison can lead you to like appreciation for what other people are able to do, and so you can look at Hugh Jackman and go like, man, good for that guy at that age. That's tough to keep up. I don't have that discipline in the kitchen. Or you can look at it and then compare yourself and feel inferior. And I think that's the whole idea of like what the body's meant to do is not meant to be a self-referential thing. It's an instrument. And by instrument I mean it's an image. It's meant to point people past itself to the Lord. I don't point from my body to your body. I point from my body to the Lord, and it's a temple. And so the Christian view of ourselves as temples and as good leads to the desire to cultivate health and wellness. And I think that has to be an emphasis nowadays because of the sedentary nature of life and work. You didn't have to think about health 120 years ago before big food is trying to poison you, and your job is trying to like cripple you by sitting you at a desk for 42 hours a week. And so now you have to react to the technological society by on purpose moving and investing in your body. And I think even like you take a guy like Peter Attia, who wrote the book Outlive. He's an MD. His podcast is pretty dense, but I really like his book. And he writes 300 something pages about the types of exercise and types of diet that you need to extend your health span, not just your lifespan. And in the last chapter, he talks about how this entire thing for him, pursuing health, has been about his unprocessed fear of death. The end. Wow. And that's like the end where his book ends. Like, what's the point of this? And he's been pursuing it so hard. And I think for Christians, you go, okay, well, Hebrews 2 talks about that Jesus has set those who were subject to lifelong slavery because of their fear of death. He sets them free by defeating death with death. And so we're investing in a long-term thing here with our bodies, that our bodies will be risen. Like it's not like we're just burying money in the yard and calling it an investment. Like we're buying to hold long term when we invest in our bodies. If you're thinking about like the return, that I'm going to be in this body resurrected forever, and so I'm acting as though it will live forever, even though I know it will be this period of time in which I'm dead, right, where the body is dead. But it's a valuable long-term thing I'm investing in and caring for. Like the difference between how you treat a rental property versus a home you own. The rental property, if problems come up, it's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem. I'm moving out in 2 years. But a home that I own, it's like if there are problems that pop up, it's my problem. I'm not, like I have to, so I'm more invested and more interested in taking care of it. And so our bodies are us, and they are our home. And so I think health, functionality, should be the primary motivator. And when you think about it like that, now when you consider steroids or recreational TRT, now you're doing this like weighing of things, right? So I had one buddy who went on TRT, and he had a small tumor in his brain, and as soon as he went on TRT, the tumor exploded. Because
Like died?
No, it just grew up really big. He didn't die.
Oh.
Yeah, it grew really big. So exploded was probably the wrong word. No, it was like a small tumor in his brain, and the hormones feed the tumor, and it just grows. He loses his eyesight, has to come off TRT, needs medical intervention. It's a medical thing. Now and now he's doing better. But here's what I talked to one of my doctor friends, and I said,
Oh my God.
So I said, what are the risks with artificial tests? And he said, well, they're pretty low, but they're there. And here's the phrase he said that stuck with me is, the same testosterone that grows muscles grows tumors. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't need to be on TRT, you should not want to be on TRT.
Yep.
Because there's no medical intervention. I don't care what the vaccine companies say. There's no medical intervention that is risk zero. And so you're just weighing the issues.
I hear Andrew Huberman talks about this a lot when he talks about TRT or HGH, which obviously peptides have become a big thing too. And so, with that, this onset of like, if you have something in your body, a tumor, a growth, any kind of disease or issue, as soon as you start taking that, you immediately are susceptible to rapid growth in those areas. And so he was actually saying, that is why it's so important, if you're going to go down this line, that you need to do it under true doctor supervision and not a lot of this bullshit doctor supervision, which is like, I found somebody that will write me a prescription and ship it to me without ever seeing me. Like I blood test every single month or every 8 weeks. They're monitoring so many levels because it's like, it scares the living crap out of you. Like, you do not want to tempt, what is already there.
Yeah. And again, just like any medical intervention, like anytime you have a surgery, there's risks, but you have it because you need it. And so, and that's where I think from a Christian perspective, like, even though it's kind of hard to discern sometimes what's the medical versus recreational use of tests, trying to go medical use, we should feel green lights about, open but cautious, but the recreational use, I feel like probably breaks the sixth commandment, the commandment to not kill. Like you're playing fast and loose with your temple here. Yeah. And so one of my buddies who gets his test mailed in from Mexico, and among other things, it's because he wants to be big. And, I love the guy, but I think that's foolish. Like, that's not a good choice. And as one of his friends, I'm like, hey, man, think about your daughter. This is like, you got to consider what's going on here. And you got to consider the risks you're taking and what's the ROI on this situation? Because a lot of it is just your self-worth. If you're trying to find it in what's in the mirror, you're gonna never find it. It's like looking for a Chick-fil-A on Sundays. Like, you can drive, you can look forever. You will not find one you can go into. And so I think that's part of, for people who are listening who feel like, I wish my body was different, I wish it functioned different. I think this is a Christian theology of desire, right? Some desires are good and need to be acted on. Some desires are immoral desires. You should not want that, and you should try to repent of those desires. Like, we can have disordered desires. And so the desire to be bigger for the sake of being bigger, I think, is mostly a disordered desire, and that's a desire we discipline. I think the desire to be healthy, to be strong, to be able to act as an intercessor in danger, that if you have like a strong back and strong arms and you can carry someone out of a burning building, that's a good thing to want. I had a mentor named Dan Doriani who he told me his like fitness goal. He's at the time, I think 70 or something like that. He said, my standard for fitness is, can I carry my wife for a mile and can I do 9 pull-ups? And he said, I think those fitness goals help me make sure my pursuit of fitness is rooted in love of neighbor, not just in vanity or something else. And so he's a fit guy in his 70s who that's his goal. Like when I'm 90, I want to be able to do 9 pull-ups and still be able to carry my wife a mile. Because if we go for a walk and she breaks her ankle, I want to be able to pick her up and carry her back to the car. And so I go, that to me is like a vision for the male body that I think Christians should unapologetically just get on board with, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, I have friends who are firefighters and their goals are, I need to be able to carry this sandbag for 30 minutes on the stair climber because that's my job. I'm here to serve and protect in the worst of scenarios. And so I think more functionally oriented, love, neighbor-oriented fitness goals is good. I don't think wanting to look good is bad, right? You and I got dressed this morning and put things on our bodies that we at least thought were good enough. Concern for how you present, desiring to be attractive to your spouse or to attract a possible spouse, those things are also not bad, as long as they're not done to the neglect of other responsibilities or your own health.
Yeah.
Right. And my wife likes it when my abs show, but almost certainly at some point in my life that won't really be feasible without me being super anal with my food and or chemical intervention.
Yeah.
And if I'm super anal with my food and I'm trying to like hang out with people and go to lunch with people and grab beers with coworkers or go on a double date, and I'm like, sorry, I can't enjoy myself on date. I can't enjoy myself on date night because I'm trying to get you to be attracted to me. Yeah. Like that. It's a downward spiral here that the Bible calls gray hair a crown of glory. That the Bible is actually positive on aging, and so a lot of like hatred of our aging is actually unbiblical. Like the elders, the esteemed, the aged ones, the wise. Some of it is like our worship of youth is just idolatrous and dumb and unbiblical, and getting old is a good thing. It's actually a privilege. Not everyone gets to do it. And part of the joy of growing older is it contains with it the pain of growing older. And so I think trying to embrace both those realities is a big part of the tension here.
Well, and I think that, what I've heard over and over again, which I think is so wise and people really need to hone in on, it really comes down to worth and value. And I say this a lot in, the context of business, in which there's a lot of people that aren't Christians, and there's people that listen to this podcast that aren't Christians. And I always say, like, apart from knowing Christ, you will never understand your true worth and value. Even once you do, it's a difficult thing to do. But in Christ, we see that we have eternal worth and value because of who He's created us to be, that He died for us, But so for those that struggle with that, and particularly in vein of what you have studied, this journey that you have been on, like a guy comes to you and he's like, I love Jesus with my whole heart. I know that He created me, that He saved me, that He sustains me. I have eternity with Him in heaven. I hate the way I look.
Yeah, so I had this happen last week at the church. Guy came in, he's just wants to look and feel differently. And so my first question is like, well, what do you not like about how you look? Right? And if he says, like, I'm so skinny I can't get a girl to go on a date with me, I would say, like, well, that's probably not why. It might be why you're blaming it on, but most women don't weigh a guy before they say yes or no to a date. So some of it is like, are you blaming some of your problems on this that don't deserve to be blamed on this? And so I asked him that question. Then the other question is like, well, what do you want to look like? And if he's like, I just want to be able to change the tire on my car and not feel like I'm going to pull a muscle, I'm like, that's a great thing to pursue. Here's, Wendler 531, get at it. Eat your body weight in protein. You should probably take creatine, drink a ton of water, get 8 hours of sleep. Good luck. Go get it. Go for it.
Yeah.
If they're like, man, I've been watching UFC and the way you can see like 12 of those guys' abs, I just want to look like that. I want to be the fittest. I go like, first of all, that's not going to happen. Almost certainly it's not going to happen. Two, if you actually want that to happen, you're going to, destroy your heart, and it's going to have to take up your whole life. You'll have to have no situation there. And I'll try to redirect, like, sometimes looks can be an indication of health, not always. There are times when I look in the mirror and I go like, I think I've been, drinking too much, or I think I've been having too much dessert, or I think I've been slipping on my discipline with food. And so sometimes the mirror tells you the truth about how you've been eating the last 90 days. And you go like, oh, I think I want to lock it in this January and try to make sure that I'm not on pace for obesity 40 years from now. You gain, it doesn't take much to gain 1 pound a month, which then becomes, 50 pounds in 4 years. Right. So, so trying to weigh yourself every now and then, look in the mirror every now and then, just go like, am I generally on, is the trajectory here good or is it bad? And obviously that could become anal and a problem. So someone saying they don't like how they look, to me, isn't enough information to know whether I'm going to tell them but about half the time I say like, hey, you don't like how you look? Let me help you figure out how to look different, because your reasons for wanting to change your body composition I think are good, and I think they're healthy. I think it's going to make you a better father and a better husband and a better contributor to your community. And other times it's like, hey, yes, you believe Jesus made you, but you're bought at a price. Like you're a temple, like you're a prince. And they kind of theoretically get it, but they don't really get how awesome the fact is that they are God's child, and that they're a prince, and that they're the temple, and that they're so valuable that Jesus died for them. I think about my phone that I have, my Apple iPhone, and I got it for free with a 3-year contract from Verizon. So I don't think it's...
It sounded like a commercial right there.
Yeah. But I don't treat it like it's valuable, because I didn't pay anything for it. Whereas there's other things I have, or in the past, the first iPhone I got, I bought it, and I was like, iPhone, be careful with the iPhone. It's valuable. But because I paid nothing for it, it's not. Whereas when you think about Jesus paid for us, he died for us, he bought with a price. He paid an incredible price for us, and so he sees us as valuable. And so there's careful, there's regard, there's concern, preoccupation even. And so sometimes people just don't feel died for by Jesus, and therefore they don't like how they look. The other thing, if someone says I don't like how I look, most of the time I tell them, you probably need to spend less time on TikTok and Instagram and more time in books and touching grass and serving in your church and serving the poor or the elderly. You need to go, you're probably being poisoned digitally, because the algorithms want you to feel terrible about yourself so that you buy the products that they sell you to help you feel not terrible about yourself. So if your Instagram feed or your TikTok feed is making you feel fat or weak, they're probably about to sell you a product that will make you less fat and stronger. And so just know that if you don't like how you look, there's billions of dollars and thousands of people who want you to feel that way so that they can sell you something. And so you feel like they want you to feel. And so the way you get away from that is you got to take the needle out of your arm and probably do a phone detox and go walk around in nature. And you never saw a bear or a tiger or a bird with body image issues, because no one's, and so go get out in nature, and it's going to be good for you. So there's a lot of reasons someone might not like how they look. Some of them could be, the answer is, well, then try to look better. But probably about 2/3 of the time, I think the answer is you probably need to do some heart issues here, and changing how you look's not actually going to do anything for you.
Yeah, that's good. So what are you prayerful for in this regard? Because obviously you spent a lot of time studying this. There's no cultural end in sight as to this happening. I mean, the world, as you just said right there, preys on wealth, health, and relationships. The health one in the middle really even lends to the relationship one and other things. And so the culture is not alleviating itself anytime. And so what are you hopeful for as you look forward?
Well, for a long time, I think Christians really de-emphasized the value of the body, because kind of like the rapture-oriented, otherworldly, God only cares about your soul, he doesn't care about your body. And so on the one hand, in Christian circles, I'm pretty happy to see the resurgence of the pursuit of fitness, of well-being, of health, of just the value of spending time making sure your temple's clean and stable and solid. And so I hope that continues. I think Christians should go to the gym and care about what they eat. And I think that the financial structures of society don't want you to go to the gym, and they don't want you to eat well. And so it's countercultural, and it's to be pro-body and to do so. I think at the same time, just like pursuing a lot of money, I don't think is a bad thing. But at the same time, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So how do you use money, not love money? I think just like the pursuit of health, like we want to use our health, not worship it, to the neglect of us living in God's creation, to the neglect of, so you go to the gym for 2 hours, like that time comes from somewhere. Mm-hmm. You know, you're going to spend less time with your kids, less time with your wife, less time at work, less time with the Lord. Like at the gym, there's pretty severe diminishing marginal returns after about 40 minutes of the time you're in the gym. Yeah. And so if you did Peter Thiel's whole outlive thing, you'd have to be in the gym about 12 hours a week. And you go, I don't know if that's a great use of time. Some people, that might be a good use of time. Most people, doing more than 4 hours in the gym is probably not a good use of time. And so at one point, something is idolatrous is when you're sacrificing things in order to get it, or sacrificing things you should not sacrifice in order to get it. You obviously have to sacrifice some time to go to the gym, but when you're sacrificing what you should be doing at work, or sacrificing what you should be doing with your kids or with your wife in order to get increasing iterations of healthy, you're in bad shape. And so I think that most of the Christians I talk to are actually doing a pretty good job on this stuff. I think there's some internal angst. The devil's always coming for your heart. But as far as like the patterns of their life, I would go, I think most Christians get, at least a B on diet and exercise, at least the ones that I know. I know there's some people failing, some people get A+. But probably if you listen to this podcast, you're concerned about it, probably your rhythms of your life are doing pretty good. I think there may just need to be some like internal reflection, a commitment to not looking in the mirror in the gym. Whenever I do squats, I face away from the mirror because one, I just don't like looking at my shorts when I'm squatting, but also just kind of go like, I just don't want to be making eye contact with myself. It feels not healthy. I don't like it. There's some treadmills that face the mirror, some treadmills that don't. I choose the non-mirror ones, just because I feel like if I can do little things to break away from the vanity culture, I want to do those little things to break away from the vanity culture.
Yeah, that's so good, man. I love it because, I think at the end of the day, it's all the things that I want to talk to my daughters growing up about is what I want other men to hear about for themselves. It's so easy to project this on other people and even to live this to some degree, but to truly live this out, which goes back to understanding who Christ has created us to be, and putting all of our worth, all of our value into that, and then letting him inform the rhythms of our life and the shape of our body is just so, so powerful. So I love that, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you talking so openly about this stuff. I do think it needs to happen more often, because I appreciate Joe Rogan, but the man's not trying to follow Jesus, and so some people like you who are trying to follow Jesus, I think, need to be able to talk about these things in these spaces as well, and it's a really big deal.
Yeah, well, it takes guys like you that are super smart about it, that can speak with a lot more wisdom, and I just get to, hopefully try and broadcast it a little bit more. So I appreciate you, dude. I can't believe it has been 12 years. A long time has passed. A lot of life has been lived, but it's just been an honor and just a privilege to watch you from the outside and what you've done with your life and how you're leading so well in church, in family, in the community. I think it takes hundreds of thousands of more guys like you to truly make an impact in the world, but it starts with one, and it's a choice you made, and I think it's a choice that we all have to make. So thanks for doing it, and thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Appreciate your hospitality.
Of course. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up another episode of Unlocking Greatness. As always, questions, comments, concerns, you know where to find me. I'll put some sort of contact information for Seth in the show notes so you can hit him but not bother him. And until next time, thank you guys so much.